So as we have discussed in the earlier class about your shoulder girdle, the three bones that form scapula, humerus and clavicle. Next we are coming to the forearm bones. The forearm bones. So in the forearm bones, if we talk about, the two bones that forms the forearm bones, that is your radius, thumb, up, ulna, thumb, down. So radius and ulna, thumb up, thumb down. So this one is the ulna and this one is the radius, the small one. So radius and ulna, if you are going through these bones, the radius and the ulna bone. So here we can see with the radius and ulna, this is the humerus that connected to the ulna. So ulna is the big bone. If you look at here, it is bigger than the radius. So radius and ulna, here we go. So radius is basically thumb up. When your thumb is up on the thumb side, if you look at here from the right side, on the thumb side, this is the radius. This is on the thumb side. So radius on the thumb side, ulna on the pinky finger side, the inner bone. The thumb up is your radius, and thumb down, if you look at from the pinky finger, that is your ulna. So these two bones, basically that forms your forearm region, right? The forearm region here, if you look at from this part. So humerus comes to here, radius comes on that side, on thumb side, ulna comes to the inner side, the inner part of your forearm. So after the radius and ulna, if we talk about the problem, what is the common problem on the elbow? In the elbow nowadays, the problem that is coming to the elbow joint is we call hyperextension, the hypermobility of the elbow. Normally, if you ask the person to face your elbows like this way, it comes into the straight line here, right? Comes to the straight line. But when the hyperextension comes, the elbow becomes completely locked like this and it goes slightly out of deviation. Right, out of deviation. So hyperextension, that happens. Weakness on your biceps. Weakness on your biceps muscle, hyperextension, overuse of your triceps. So hyperextension, we say locking off the joint, that we say the locking of elbow joint. Hyperextension. So for this hyperextension of the elbow, so hyperextension, when we talk about the hyperextension of the elbow, sometimes it is genetically, sometimes we create it by carrying a wrong angle. So carrying angle is getting disturbed here, right? The carrying angle is going like this on the more outer deviation. And this is the hyperlocked, right? Completely locked of the joint. This is the hyperextension comes like this. So it doesn't only affect of your elbow joint, because the elbow is the junction between your wrist and shoulder. So if the mobility of the elbow is affected, it affects the mobility of the shoulder joint and wrist joint also. The ligament around this elbow joints become weak because of the overlocking of the joint. So after some time, what happens? Muscle gets zero load. So no load, no activation of the muscle, and there is hyperactivation or extra load comes to your joint. So then the joint becomes more loaded. and that's why hypermobility comes, and the other soft tissues get more weaker again. So guys, better like if you're going for the poses, like if you're going for this pose, suppose. So in the hyperextension, this happens. If you look at from my elbows, in the hyperextension, this happens. So you can see the pressure is coming to my wrist also, the pressure is coming to my shoulder. My shoulders are going forward. This also happens in the downward facing dog. This happens. So these eyes of the elbows from here has to be face each other. Rather to go in this position, I just rotate it slightly here. So my eyes of the elbows here and here, they have to be face each other. The slightly rotation. So my wrist muscles are also active, shoulder is also active. But if I'm going like this and try to do this, shoulder is coming also out of the alignment, elbow is going backwards, and the extra pressure comes to my wrist joint. You can see my wrist crease here. So look at here, this is happening here, right? So this is the problem too. So if you're in the downward facing dog or in cat and cow, you are going to do, just slightly turn it in, activate the muscles. You can slightly micro bend your elbows to activate your biceps muscle here. So this we can do also. So avoid. Same thing when you're trying to go for the pose like cobra pose. So or upward facing dog, right? Upward facing dog or cobra. In the cobra you are doing this. This happens again to the elbows. So it's better, no need to go completely back. Just try to bring your elbows close to your trunk, engage your muscles here, and just hold it here. That's it. So first maintain or bring the muscle strength to your body. Same thing with the upward facing dog. Rather to go completely up, roll your elbows in, engage the shoulder muscles, wrist muscles, and elbow muscles, and then release. When I'm going for the side plank here, like this way, if hyperextension is there, this happens. Right? The elbow comes out of the alignment. So it's better, person who's a hyperextended elbow, so just go on your forearm, first practice this way to maintain the strength and feel the muscle activation rather to overload your joint. So these are the modifications you can do. What else you can do is just bring any weight of 1 or 2 kg, like you do in the biceps curl in the gyms, like water bottle, 1 liter, 2 liter, and this movement. But make sure it has not to be go like this or away, then again it goes for the hyperextension. It has to be close to your trunk and do that way. So this way you can prevent the hyperextension of the elbows. The most common problem nowadays, that's why people say no injuries on the elbows, no injuries on the wrist, no injuries on the shoulders. After that also I'm feeling wrist pain, shoulder pain, elbow pain. So common problems, and try to avoid these mistakes which we have discussed right now. Try to avoid these mistakes in that kind of special poses. Otherwise injuries come back again, again and again. So eyes of the elbows here has to be face each other when you're trying to do downward facing dog, cat and cow, or any forward bending poses too. Upward facing dog, cobra, elbow has to be close to the trunk. And no need to go to the final range of motion until you can't find strength in your muscles around your biceps and forearm. So I hope this must be clear to you. Exercises you can do for the elbow hyperextension to maintain the tone on your biceps. But elbow has to be close to the trunk. Remember always. So 2 bones that forms the forearm. Radius on the thumb side, ulna on the inner side. So how to remember this humerus, radius and ulna? So sometime when you meet someone, so mostly what people ask, hi, how are you? So how are you? How are you? right? This is A. H for how, R for and U, right? So H for humerus, R for radius, and U for ulna. So this is, as you see, hello, how are you? So H humerus, R radius, U ulna. So easy way to remember. So I hope this must be clear to you guys with the forearm, hyperextension, preventive exercises, how to prevent into the poses, this hyperextension, and maintain the muscle strength. So if sometimes people have hyperextension, they can be corrected if you are taking care of them and if you are focusing on their individual alignments, giving them good exercise procedure and correcting them in the poses so you can maintain the muscle growth again and again and has a good muscle tone. So that's it for today's class. Check with your colleagues, with your partners, with your students, and check your elbow also. Am I hyper flexible or not? Try to get this modification into the poses. Do some exercises. Come to us with the questions, with the queries. We'll solve together. So thank you so much for today's class. Namaste. Have a nice day.